these, yeah, I mean, it's just these four slides can't
Yeah.
come out, so they're put together and they're
Perfect.
like that, okay.
Thank you.
Okay, and then her annotated agenda is also for that, but Brenda didn't make it clear if she follows along on this, but what I did here is I put, and she's here, this.
Now, so the community gave that to them. That being passed along. All covered in the board, but look, I would, if you were in the state, even if you're not.
Test. 1, 2.
Good morning. This is the Northeast Ohio Area-wide Coordinating Agency Governance Committee meeting scheduled for Friday, May 8th, 10 o'clock. We will call this meeting to order at 10:02. Do we have a quorum, Ms. Walker? We do. All right, let us take a moment to All right, thank you. In compliance with notification requirements of Ohio's open meeting law, notice that this meeting has been publicly posted and major public media has been notified. NOACA conducts its meetings according to Robert's Rules of Order. Actions during the meeting will be taken by voice vote. If any member feels the need to abstain from any vote due to conflict of interest, he or she should state their intention to abstain when the matter is introduced by the chair for presentation for the record. Subsequently, that member shall not participate in any discussion of the matter for which a conflict exists. According to Robert's rules, absence from a meeting does not require a member to abstain from voting on the minutes. If the member still wishes to abstain, he or she should state their intention for the record. For the benefit of our guests from the public and the recording of this meeting, please be sure to speak into the microphone. The microphones can be turned on and off using the button on top of them. Okay, got our meeting minutes of February 13th. Trying to think, didn't we have a meeting in between? Or,
We did.
yeah.
We don't have those.
Oh, we don't have the meeting yet, minutes yet. Okay,
It's too soon ago, and
Okay.
we're still working on them.
got it. All right, but we will take any corrections or additions for the February 13th minutes. And if none, can I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Beveridge, and a second from Ms. Tooman. Thank you, Director, our Chief. All right, it's been motioned in second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, motion passes. Has anyone signed in to speak today? Okay, seeing no one in. Okay, then we'll move on to Chairman's report. I just wanted to say I appreciated the special meeting from this a few weeks back, where we talked about just maybe to bring, I think probably just bring Dave up to speed. You've probably been briefed, Dave Greenspan, but it's good to see you here. And we talked about an aviation advisory council. We also talked about composition of voting members of the executive committee. And we will take both of those items up today and more. But I appreciated the exchange at the last meeting. We will have an executive committee meeting after this meeting. And I'm looking to you, Grace, if there's anything you want to preview on today's agenda beyond what I just talked about.
No, but I do want to let you know that I was at a conference last week, and the panel right after mine had a gentleman on it that was responsible for the aviation council at the Dallas MPO. So I got a chance to catch up with him, had some really good conversation with him. He indicated they had 40 airports and had each member on their council. But he did offer to come and talk to us, probably via, virtual. But he is very interested in supporting the work that we're doing.
Keep them as a resource.
Yes.
Very good. All right, well, with that, I think we're going to move into, let me see, presentations. Are there action items, Grace, Liz? We've got them here. Okay.
Yes, the Aviation Advisory Council Charter is an action item.
Okay. Aviation Advisory Committee Charter it is.
Okay. So this is presented for action. The Governance Committee is asked to consider recommending the Aviation Advisory Council Charter to the Executive Committee for placement on the June 2026 Board of Directors meeting agenda. There's no previous action, but it has been discussed here at the two different Governance Committee meetings now. Did want to briefly go over, this was discussed at the last meeting, but this is what the NOACA code says regarding the formation of advisory councils. It can be formed a couple of different ways. We are going to take this to the board ultimately. And then the charter will go to the Transportation Subcommittee for review, since that's who it's reporting to. advisory council members don't have to be board members. It can be subject matter experts. So that's why this type of group was chosen ultimately. So again, going to go over the contents of the charter, just noting the red lines that were made during the last meeting. So you've seen this, but this is the updated version that's also in your packet. The purpose was amended two different ways. One, based on Mr. Goris's comments about what are NOACA's specific responsibilities. Other than including it in the long-range plan, NOACA doesn't have specific responsibilities related to aviation. So this is really about guiding NOACA in this kind of new role. Also, it was descriptors about airports and aviation facilities were taken out, so it's broader and more inclusive following Commissioner Beveridge's comments. So this is the new updated purpose. These are the goals. The only thing that was changed was adding that funding is now included as a goal. You want me to spend some more time? Let me know. Otherwise, I'm just gonna go through these. No change to the activities for the council. And then the membership, which is where you all spent most of the time discussing, has had some changes. Focusing on that, membership should include representation of public airports as well as those subject matter experts. The elected officials can have an appointee in their role. We went with the language of appointee since that's consistent with the code. I think there was some discussion about designee. That's not really a term we have defined. Appointee is something we're currently using in our code, so just for consistency. And so that's for the commissioner or county executive, the mayor, and then of the largest city, and then city council representation for the largest city.
Just for the record on that last bullet point, I don't know if it's necessary, but since I think the intent of this is Cleveland City Council, you might want to put Cleveland City Council. I've got another council president in the room here, Council President Greenspan. So,
With
unless-
the largest
yeah.
airport.
I mean, it might be just implied because of the bullet point before it, but
No, I think it says it in the second line, the city with the largest airport. in the
yeah,
country.
no, that's why I'm saying it might be
Okay.
implied, but the third bullet says the president of city council. I don't know if you have to refer to
No,
that
the
as
third
a.
bullet in the second line says the same thing.
Where does it say-
President of
where
city
does it say
council
Cleveland?
or the chair of its transportation committee for the city with the
Oh,
largest.
okay. So it is. Good enough. Sorry for the
And
disruption.
then this is the membership, continuing on, specified that for ODOT could be Office of Aviation or Drive Ohio, which covers their AAM program. We put some of the subject matter experts together under one umbrella, so 3 members covering any of these aviation-related sectors. And then even more broad, but with some guardrail, up to 3 more members appointed by the chair of the council relative to the expertise needed. It gives us a little flexibility for anybody we might be missing, since I'm certainly not an aviation expert, but ideally our chair will be. Good,
Okay, if that's,
so
yeah,
As
any
they mentioned-
questions on that before we go to next steps on the composition?
I'll go.
Go ahead.
Right, so
Mr.
I'm
Greenspan.
new, but some of you know me for a while. Just to comment on, and maybe a different perspective. First of all, let me clarify, Commissioner Riddell last meeting referenced that committee should be no larger than eating a large pizza. And he got that from me, so I told him I was gonna correct the record tonight, so I got that from Jeff Bezos, but if this is meant to be an advisory body and they have no real authority to do much of anything, I remember I listened to the meeting, and I remember Director Teowin, or Chief Bonnie, made reference to keeping it small. And I'm just curious, if it's advisory only, why would we not want to have subject matter experts meeting? I know Director referenced the airport directors might not make it, their time is precious, but a director or their representatives and an airport director from the largest airport and limit it to 6. If their purpose is merely advisory, and Grace, maybe you can answer this. Does NOACA have the ability to compel ODOT to be present at any of these meetings? So if you were to put an ODOT representative, are they required to attend?
No, we would be inviting them to attend, and it would be their choice to accept or not accept.
But the airport folks all report either directly to the commissioners or to the mayor. So there would be a direct representative of those communities, which would be compelled to attend. So I always get leery about compelling membership to bodies that we don't have the authority to require them to attend. And tying up a seat might in itself cause issues when it comes for voting or quorum. So I just raised that. And if once again, I circled various things, it's advisory in nature. You want your subject matter experts to quote Director Teeuwen. And if you look at the activities, it's provide recommendations, advise, facilitate, recommend, and set goals. Those are non-legislative. Those are merely subject matter experts concepts. Once again, trying to keep it small, trying to keep it focused, and trying to stay within the boundaries in which there is authority to make appointments.
If I may, the component of ODOT's membership, ODOT is a member of our board. The membership that we would be asking for on this committee, that we're requesting them to participate in, is mostly about reciprocating. They invite us to participate on their committee and stakeholders groups about AAM and some other aviation things occasionally. So it was that sort of reciprocation, but it would be their choice to attend or not attend.
Well, if that was to be an additional member, that would make it 7, which would make it a nice uneven number for voting purposes. So I wasn't aware, like I'm learning, I wasn't aware that there was some authority there. Just my thought on composition, keep it small, keep it to those who haven't recommend. They're just advisory. They're not, I don't mean to diminish that role. They're advisory. Just a thought.
Thank you. Thank you, Dave. And any others that, go ahead, Nick, if you got something.
I just concur. I think one of my comments last time is, the top five, 6, 7 commissioners, they're already coming to multiple meetings.
Yeah.
And again, I concur with David with the advisory portion of the expertise. So just, repeating that comment. So.
Can you go back to that slide just before that, Liz, or whomever's in it? Whereas we added the or their appointee language for the commissioners, I think some of our discussion was centered around the likelihood that we do have a couple of commissioners that do have aviation experience and do fly. But I think, and then from my survey of the two of them, Commissioner Gallagher and McIntosh, I think they are interested in this committee and being partners and leaders on it. I think that it was important we caught that language of the or their appointee. I wondered if on the second slide, the directors of airports should have the same discretion. We do know that, I'll just use, and Chief Teeuwen, you can concur with this. I think he brought this up last time that that Brian's a busy guy as the airport director, but could he designate his number 2 or 3, that also probably have sufficient aviation experience. So I didn't know if we should add, and maybe to catch up with some of Mr. Greenspan's points, just expertise, but sufficient expertise by way of a designee.
The members do have alternates too,
Okay,
like you all. So
okay,
that could be addressed that way as well.
okay. All right. Well, Dave, the conversation did come up about the size of this, and I love the pizza analogy, by the way. I guess where we do get a concern sometimes comes down to quorum, but it's all proportional. I have a feeling this is going to be a fairly popular committee, though, for the aviation people that are in this. That's just my feeling. The genesis for all was, this came up when Cleveland was looking at and is looking at the conversion of Burke. And if Burke goes to a different land use, then what's the rest of the reliever system look like? And I think this is a very timely committee. We're not debating the worthiness of it. I think there's just a discussion about numbers and composition. Go ahead, Grace.
Maybe if we're concerned again about the size of the, if you want to go back one slide, Liz, the size of the committee, the 5 commissioners are intended to be not only representatives of the county, but representatives of the board, so board members. So you might, if you're feel that the airport folks would represent the county sufficiently, maybe it's, up to 5 commissioners, so that the commissioners can decide if their county wants to be represented. I understand that the concern about making sure we had commissioners, as opposed to just representatives of the airports, is at least in one instance, which is Geauga County, the airport is not part of the county. It is a separate board, right?
Yeah, it is a separate board.
Right, so if you had the airport represented, but not the commissioners, you would not be on, there would be no one from the county on the council. So that was what we were trying to address. But if you're concerned about that and some commissioners or county executive do not want to participate, they cannot participate, they don't have to.
Yeah.
So is that maybe something that you're
Yep.
up to?
Along the,
Go ahead there, Chief.
along those lines, it just so happens that the largest airport in our region is a public airport. But publicly run airport, but there are instances where airports are authorities, private airports. I don't know if we should pigeonhole the fact that it says the largest public airport.
Are you suggesting adding the word public or?
Striking the word public,
Oh,
so that
okay.
it's the largest airport. So that if
Um,
for some reason, the Hopkins Airport goes to an authority, that it's still included in that.
Yeah.
But it still would be an airport. Oh, but you're
Came up-
saying,
that came-
It
because
says,
it's saying
That's the-
Publicly run.
the mayor, oh,
It's actually on the next slide.
Yep.
public.
But if it went to an authority, it still would be a public airport. The only way it
For
would not,
correct, for public use, but not publicly run.
but an authority still is public, like the Port Authority is still public.
It doesn't have the direct oversight from the city like it does right now. It would have a board, would be run by a board, which would have appointees from the city and the county.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we chose the word public rather than municipal to try and
That's
address that.
probably better, yes.
Is this,
But I don't think it matters one way or the
I was
other.
gonna say, is there,
That's fine.
no, also Bonnie, I think there's probably a willingness to just strike public.
If you strike public,
It's,
fine.
it's,
It's
yeah.
one and the same.
we could just as soon say Hopkins, but we're
We
not
could
gonna
just
say
do
Hopkins.
it.
So is it okay with everybody if we strike that? Okay. All right. Well, back to the point about size, and I guess, Liz, you covered the, airport directors do have alternates because I just think of the Hopkins director and know how busy he is. So I think you really want technical people that can be designees. It sounds like we cover that. I mean, we can go one of two ways. We can sort of try to winnow this down right now, or we could approve it and see how it goes. Again, I'm hoping this will be a popular committee, not just for commercial and recreational flights, but also the drone activities we're starting to see and we know will continue to burgeon. So the next steps was your next slide. Maybe we should go through it and then come back to any conversation.
An option that Director Galucci just mentioned for the first 2 bullet points is we could say something like 6 members of the board of directors with 1 representative from each county in the city of Cleveland. That means it doesn't have to necessarily be commissioners. It's just board members. It could be the engineer or a
Yeah,
mayor from that.
Alternates handle that too.
That what, or their appointee is?
yeah.
It is. It's just a little, the appointee personally makes me nervous. If that's what you guys want, we can do that. We have a reference in it to the code. There are alternates, but that's that starts to get a little tough to define, especially as we're going through these code exercises where we keep coming up against ambiguities. I think specificity is better, but I know you all need flexibility, so just pointing out options that currently exist on other groups.
You know, my only thought on the going the seven, there was a 5 airport directors or representatives, alternates cover that, director of, or alternate for Cleveland, and the ODOT member. If the purpose, once again, is aviation advisory, why would we want people on here that don't have aviation experience? And when you put electeds in the mix, it may get political. They're just aviation advisory. I wouldn't recommend somebody being on a committee if they've got no experience just because they're an elected official. Just throwing that out.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. We've been grappling with a lot of things at governance lately. One of the popular threads that we've dealt with is elected officials at the table for committee meetings, and I think that's part of what we're honoring here. But to your point, Dave, I think everybody believes that you should get people around the table who have expertise, not just, gee, he or she works in my office and they should just go in my stead. We really want people that know this and can advise. So, I mean, I think some of this is just encouraging commissioners who aren't aviation experts. Again, you've got one in Lorraine County and you've got one in Lake County that are, but the other 3 counties encouraging people like me to put the right person on the committee, which I got some ideas, so.
Yeah, I think the other thing is that just kind of hearing what we've been saying for the last couple of meetings, again, the reason that we were looking at commissioners was because although we are looking, this is an aviation council, and we certainly want expertise from the aviation industry, this is not sort of an industry purpose. It is for economic development. It is for land use. It is for overall mobility in the region. And so that was the reason that the commissioners or county executive were, or their appointee were sort of thought of, that something that the director of the airport maybe, or the appointee doesn't really have all of the knowledge as, say, either the mayor, the commissioner, or their direct appointee that works with them.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. We're at the Cuyahoga County Airport. We are focused on land assembly and economic development around the anchor of the airport itself. So, you've got a pretty broad approach to this. The point that Dave and Nick have continued to make is well taken about the size. I think one way we could do this is, approve this and see how it populates, monitor how it's going relative to attendance and leadership. I think you'll see some natural leaders emerge in this, just especially the people with aviation experience. But your point's well taken that we're trying to drive, I think, because the spirit of our last 2 conversations on this is a strong aviation system is good for a strong economy, So again, I'm willing to, wherever you guys want to take the actual number size, wherever you want to take it, because we're going to start somewhere and see how it goes. But I think the main thing would be that we see how this populates, we see how it's led, and we monitor its engagement. Because there have been advisory committees councils that have not proved out to be very well attended. I think we've had to adjust, but hopefully this one will be, because of the timeliness of the conversations around Burke. And my opinion is we really ought to be strong on the drone side too, and also, like you said, the economic development side around airports. So,
Chair,
go ahead, please.
quick question and a comment. Part about the 5 commissioners, blah, 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 the first thing. Do they theoretically have to have an appointee? Like, for example, if a county, hypothetically Medina, doesn't want to have somebody on the committee, but they want their airport person there, right? Can they just not put a commissioner or?
They cannot, yes, we can
Right.
keep it vacant. And I was saying, to make it clear, you could say up to indicate that all 5 or 6 do not have to be members. It's their choice.
So in theory, if they're not going to really want to participate, they don't have to put somebody on, whereas somebody like my county that may have somebody of a commissioner or the county office that wants to be on it as well, in addition to
Right.
the
And when
airport person.
members are not appointed, they would not count within the quorum. So that
Right.
would help.
Keep the numbers down. Which brings me to my point of, I don't know that I would be a fan of having anything less than Lake County having their airport director as a part of this committee, as well as on the elected official, a commissioner or their appointee that they think best represents them
Mhm.
for all the other topics that you talked about beyond this isn't just flying a plane. The committee has other things to it. So there's usually 5, 6 entities to be represented here between the 5 counties and the largest city, yada, yada. By that same rationale, 2 per, you're gonna be at 12. You're gonna be over a dozen in this committee anyways. I don't know whether it matters whether it's
Yeah.
13, 17.
They're eating each a half a slice of pizza, right?
The ones that are cut in little squares.
Or it's an extra
You,
large.
you do know you can buy 2 pizzas, right?
Yeah,
I'm
right,
just-
right.
okay,
But I'm hearing I'm hearing both. I'm hearing the efficiency of a smaller committee. I'm also hearing the merits of a flexible size. If you guys are open to this idea of the up to 5 commissioners, we could add that too. Okay, I'm saying yes on that. All right, can we amend that on the
I don't
fly?
know.
Please, Nick, I'm
Liz is
sorry.
having anxiety over that one.
Yeah.
No, no.
Sorry, I thought that was concurrence with the point. Go ahead, Nick.
Parents, and
Yeah.
I think you're right. Let's see where, let's start it, see where it goes, and we can always modify and adjust so that we can have a quorum. And those that do show up can actually get something done if the others don't. And
Yeah.
I think that's more my concern with all the commissioners and the alternates. And to go to Grace's comment, sometimes the alternates aren't the experts, so they're gonna
Yeah.
come and what importance are they gonna have, or they're gonna blow it off. So
Yeah.
I'm good with this.
Okay, we'll monitor accordingly and good point, Nick. And can you go to that next steps slide? And if others have comments, just hit them.
So we'll present this to the Transportation Subcommittee. They're meeting at the beginning of June, since this council will report to them, and then present the charter, and ideally also a full membership list and meeting dates to the board for approval in June.
Okay, and who's currently chairing the Transportation Subcommittee? Remember?
Rob Duncan.
Okay. Any questions on this? So this will flow up to the Transportation Subcommittee, which will flow to the
Planning and programming.
Planning and Programming, which will flow to Executive Committee. All right, so you have the John Madden flow. All right, or Mike Fratello. So, anybody else on this matter? I have one question. How does the public interface with advisory councils, if at all?
The public body, so it'll have to be,
They have public comment
Public.
opportunity? Yeah. Okay.
In terms of the presenting for board approval and going to Transportation Subcommittee, if we're trying to get it to the board meeting in June, this time the Transportation Subcommittee does happen to meet before that meeting, which is great for this purpose. Normally, it meets immediately following. But it cannot then go to policy or planning and programming, because it would not fit into the cycle, and it really doesn't need to.
Okay.
Because it's a governance committee item. You're taking it to Transportation Subcommittee just for review and comment. It is still your jurisdiction, does not need to go to planning and programming.
Okay. Okay.
oh, thank you for that clarification. By present to Transportation Subcommittee, I just mean make them aware. Yeah.
All right. Anybody else on this? Well, I want to say, so we're going to take it to a vote.
Mhm.
All right.
Yes.
Just in advance of that, I want to thank you, members of the Governance Committee. We will monitor, to Nick's point, and see if the size is appropriate, to Dave's point, and if it's not, we can adjust at this committee, at the Governance Committee. But I do want to thank you guys for evolving this. I think this will be an important committee or advisory council in the future of NOACA. And as I mentioned, the word committee, if it really merits it, probably could elevate up to a subcommittee or committee unto itself. So thanks for your participation in developing this. It'll follow the flow that Liz articulated and probably come back for June ratification at the board level. So we have a recommendation for the Aviation Advisory Council Charter. Sorry, I'm doing your job here, Liz. To the Executive Committee for placement on the Board of Directors, June 2026 meeting agenda. Did I cover it all? Grace, we good?
We are, although you did just say something that is worth repeating and that we should give it some thought, which is this council is, or this aviation group is being deemed a council reporting to the Transportation Subcommittee, which is more of the technical advisory. But if we are going to be dealing more with things like land use and economic development, particularly if you're talking about the Hopkins, or I'm sorry, the Burke Lakefront not being Hopkins Overflow Airport and how the other counties step in, we may want to consider an elevation to a subcommittee of the economic development.
Mhm. Yeah.
Or, I'm sorry, another, probably planning.
Yeah.
Planning and
Yeah,
Subcommittee, a subcommittee.
I think,
you know,
I think that's a good point, and all that can be monitored over the next
Yeah,
few
exactly.
quarters. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that recommendation or that thought process can be actually put on the advisory council as one of their first functions.
Yep.
What do you think? How is this going to work? And where should it be in the structure?
Yep.
And I think they, as a group, would be in a really good position to discuss that. And then as it kicks off over the first year and they have their work more defined, I think it would take a really good shape.
Very good. Okay, so we will,
She
Mhm.
asked if I wanted to hold, if we wanted to hold off on board approval. I'm saying no. I'm just
No.
saying that that's a really good point that you brought
Yeah.
up. And I don't want to lose it, that we're saying it's a council now, we're defining it, we're doing this, but
Yep.
there is a potential to elevate it.
we'll take some baby steps to start and see how it goes and see if it merits a different place in the org chart, the flow chart. So very good points. Thank you. Do I have a motion? All right, Mr. Goris, do I have a second? Ms. Tewan, thank you. Discussion on the matter? Any further discussion? We've discussed it a bit. I'm gonna, just say a couple things. One is, for what we, at least the county that I'm representing, Cuyahoga, have been presented from some partners in the field about the future of drone traffic and the acknowledgement that there's going to need to be some order to that traffic in the future. I would say as much as we're focusing on all the things already aforementioned, aviation, service relief, economic development, and so on, I hope this committee does lean in on and be ahead of drone traffic management. And I would, in that vein, encourage it to entertain Baldwin Wallace's NeoFix presentation pretty early on in the discussions, because they've done an extraordinary amount of research on future drone traffic and the need for traffic management future. So future is here. All right, any other discussion? Okay, hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, the motion carries. The Aviation Advisory Council Charter will go to the Transportation Subcommittee and
for
the board,
preparation.
in June. Congratulations. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. And I want to thank the staff team and Grace, you and the team for your leadership on that and developing that.
I give it to Liz.
Liz, thank you. Thanks, everybody. All right, so I think we have a second presentation item coming off of our last conversation about executive committee.
This is not presented for action currently, but as County Executive Renee mentioned, a continuation of the conversation regarding the membership of the executive committee. So you all have seen this, but as a reminder, this is the section of NOACA's code that discusses the membership of the executive committee. And in its most simple terms, it creates what I'm calling 2 tracks for membership onto the executive committee. If you're an officer of the NOACA board, so when I say officer, no, I'm referring to these 6 positions and NOACA Board of Directors officers. So president, first vice president, second vice president, secretary, treasurer, immediate past president. It also, that section of the code also requires that a governing officer of the mayor of the largest city, so city of Cleveland, and then the 5 counties are on the executive committee. Currently, we take the 6 officers, the 6 officers of the board, the 6 governing officers for the city and the 5 counties, and overlay them. So we have 6 members of the executive committee. They are the officers of the board, and they're also the mayor of the city of Cleveland and a commissioner from one of the 5 counties.
And Liz has done some tremendous research. She went back 25 years to look at membership of the executive committee and recognize that it wasn't always that way, that the current structure is designed to be an overlay and essentially have a Senate form of government where you have one representative from each county in the city of Cleveland. But there are some deviations from that, and I'll turn it back over to Liz.
Yes, thank you. So looking back, as much as I could find on our network drives, I didn't go into the files yet, but as much as I could find on our network drives, the membership of the executive committee has ranged from as few as 6. So that's what we have right now, where you take those 6 officers of the board, the 6 governing officials, as I'll call them, and make them kind of one of the same, to as many as 10. Okay, so the governance committee is tasked specifically with nominating the officers for the board and has done so intentionally with what we call a geographic rotation, so that those 6 officers each have a representative from the city of Cleveland and the 5 counties. Now, in a scenario where the representative for, let's say, Lorain County is the engineer, that has been interpreted to mean that a commissioner from Lorain County would also need to be an executive committee member. So here, I'm going to give you an example of what this, looks like. So this is 2012 membership on the executive committee. The first 6 are the officers of the board: president, first vice president, second vice president, secretary, treasurer, immediate past president. You had 2 additional members on the executive committee because the Cuyahoga County officer was the director of regional collaboration. So you had to have the county executive on the executive committee to fulfill that governing officer requirement. And then for Lake County, because you had the engineer as the Lake County officer, you had to have a commissioner for Lake County on executive committee to fulfill the governing officer requirement. Follow me? So far. So depending on who those officers are, okay, the officers, as far back as 2000, have always rotated. The 6 officers have always had a City of Cleveland representative, Lorain County, Lake County, Geauga County, Medina County, Cuyahoga County representation. If one of those officers was not a governing officer, meaning a mayor or commissioner, then that person also had to be added to the executive committee.
And I will say,
The-
when we say also had to,
Well,
interpreted or
There's
desired.
still a
to be
level of interpretation, yeah, but
And also the way the counties wanted it, because
could be.
more recently, when we had Jeff Brandon from Medina, who was a trustee and would not be considered a governing officer in this sense, the commissioners yielded to him to be the governing officer for Medina.
Yes, thank you. This is still at the, direction and interpretation of board members. So what does that mean? If you would like to add somebody to the executive committee, you can do that with no changes to the code by virtue of your role as the nominating committee. So you would pick officers, a mayor, an engineer. You could pick officers that would mean that additional members of the executive committee would be needed to fulfill the governing officer role. So just as it was done in 2012, there was a mayor of Lorain that was an officer, then a commissioner for Lorain would have to be on the executive committee. You'd have 7 people. These are examples. So no change required, just nominate an officer that's not a commissioner or a mayor. So that could mean as few as 6 is what we have now, or as many as 12 members, depending on who the officers were. You could change the code, codify what we're doing currently, say the officers are these 6 roles. They are to be rotate between the mayor of the city of Cleveland and a commissioner from each county, and those are the members of the executive committee. Just very explicitly, these are the officers, these are the members of the executive committee. You can do something else. Whatever you want. But again, with the idea of being more specific about officer roles and therefore executive committee, since there does seem to be discussion about interpretation of what governing officer is, how many officers there are. You could change it to identify a different practice, but to still try to be explicit in who those people and roles are. Another possible option is NOACA has the chairs of subcommittees and councils on the committee or subcommittee they report to. So for example, the chair of the Transportation Subcommittee is a member of the Planning and Programming Committee. NOACA currently has an HR subcommittee that reports directly to the executive committee. If this, right now, it's not totally clear to me if they're going to be permanent or not, but if it is permanent, the chair of the HR subcommittee could be a member of the executive committee, and there you have 7 members.
I did want to point out something. So this membership was right before I took this job. In fact, these are the people that at the executive commit that were the executive committee and that interviewed and selected the executive director, which was me. But I will tell you, during that interview, they told me Jim Gills and Robert Awfuldish, the 2 from Lake County, sat together. And when I asked the question about, there's 2 of them from Lake County, they indicated, but they only had 1 vote. Not exactly sure how accurate that was, but that's what they said. Now, did that mean they only had 1 vote in the selection of the candidates, or did they have 1 vote in the executive committee? I'm not clear, but that was made clear to me that it was not, it was every county had to agree.
Right, this is reading, the black and white text. I was not here in 2012, there's always, I'm sure, some sort of agreed upon practice about, who does what, or this doesn't account for that, obviously, so.
You still got some more slides?
No.
Okay, we would entertain comment and question. I think maybe I'd ask Commissioner Beveridge to just give, if you're willing, just kind of a synopsis of, because you've been, a leader in the conversation on this, of what you think the issues at hand. I'm doing this mostly for you, Chief Tewan, because, and maybe to Dave, who weren't live in the conversations, even if you listened in on it, but just a little bit of a summary from our last meeting of what's happening and where this is going and why it's happening.
And then I have a couple questions, if
Yeah.
that's okay, sir?
Yeah, I mean, you don't have, would you rather ask your questions first? I just thought you'd be somebody to summarize what you've been talking about over the last few meetings.
We beat it up pretty good, but I'll go back to what we've been talking
Okay,
about. And
all right.
quite honestly, if you want to go back to the slide that actually writes the code, the references, I mean, I'm not a lawyer. I asked my prosecutor's office for what it's worth. They agreed with me, but clearly your guys' legal counsel is going to be what rules the day here, right? As I read, it's the 6 positions and mayor. So that's why I said I thought it should be 7. I thought this to me says 7 people, but your legal counsel has a different opinion. I stayed at a Holiday Inn Express last night. I don't have a law degree. That's fine, right? I get it. And so that's what's been my point this whole time, is that, one, I think that from a governing standpoint, it just makes sense to have 7. And I thought that the way that the code in 6.3 was written identifies it as 7, but I guess I'm wrong. My question is a couple of things. One, you said the governance committee can just nominate the executive committee. Does the governance committee?
I meant the officers.
That's
were
what
on
that's
the
what I'm asking.
executive commi-
So the governance,
Officers have to be on the executive committee, right?
right?
And if one of those officers was not a commissioner or the mayor, then you could have another person on the executive committee.
From
to
as one of
fulfill
those
that requirement.
officers. And not that I don't think this much matters, but out of curiosity, where does that person, who's that person selected by? Is it nominated from us or the governance committee? You know what I mean? Like,
It would depend, I guess, on, what county that person was from.
like, does Grace have to reach out and be like, hey, we nominated your engineer, which one of the commissioners wants to be on? And then that goes to the next year, or?
It is not defined in the code how that's done, other than to say it's the governance committee's responsibility. So could the governance committee have done exactly what you said, which is to appoint 6 officers that did not include the mayor of Cleveland, and then have the mayor of Cleveland as part of the executive committee anyway? Yes, they could
Right.
have done that.
Okay.
It has been practice in the top officer slates to have a member of each community on there, but again, it was because that's just been practice.
Okay. Which brings me to my second question, if I may.
I also wanted to bring out, just to clarify on this scenario.
Yeah.
Cuyahoga County also had 2 representatives. Ed Fitzgerald was not in those meetings. So they only had 1 representative. And then again, Lake County had the 2 that had 1 vote.
So that's not written anywhere. That just seems to be like some mythical thing that used to happen pretty,
I don't,
or,
I'm
right.
just pointing that out, yeah.
Thank you. My second question is, in theory, what you're saying is if the governance committee nominates a non-commissioner or executive from Cuyahoga or mayor, then theoretically, as the code is written, they get an extra committee member
On the
in-
executive
on the
committee.
executive committee, right?
Correct.
Okay.
And yes, and the reason I'm saying that it was practice and that why they eventually chose to do the overlay is theoretically, the governance committee, which is dominated by the outer counties, could nominate for the board seats, the officer seats, members of only the outer counties. And then the governing officers would be added to that, but that there would be an imbalance. So again, the idea of the Senate was a handshake agreement. I wouldn't say it was biblical. Handshake is where I'd put it, but that's where it was.
But not written in.
Not written in.
So in theory,
In theory, that.
the outside counties could make it so that each one of them have 2 members and nominate the county executive and mayor of the largest city. And you're looking at a 10-member board with 2 of those members coming from Cuyahoga. Thank you. Last question. Is it written specifically into the code as far as the officers and the rotation of the officer positions as it relates to chair or vice chair, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Or has that also been just the handshake? We just go through the motions and everyone gets a turn?
The rotation has always been a handshake.
Okay.
There is language in the code, and Liz, you can probably speak more specifically to this, that talks about geographic representation, but it is not specific, I don't believe.
Not specific to the offices, just officers.
I think it does say
Um,
something about not having 2 of the same something or other.
I'm just gonna read this section about code, or excuse me, officers. At the first meeting in January each year, the Board of Directors shall elect a president, first vice president, secretary, and treasurer. The board may also elect additional vice presidents, 1 or more assistant secretaries, and 1 or more assistant treasurers. Each officer shall hold office until the next annual meeting of the Board of Directors or until such officer's successor is elected and qualified, blah, blah. I don't know about, it might be in a different section. What I did, what was included in the memo was, a note from the minutes of the board. And I think the reference is from 2002, but it was included many times that the governance committee intentionally selected officers with care for geographic representation. I don't the geographic representation of the officers is not in the code, but it is clearly the intent of, I would say it's more than a handshake agreement. I mean, they documented their intention for that to be the case.
Okay.
So
Yes,
Back to
the-
closer to biblical.
Okay, so, so I think what you're saying though is that the officers don't necessarily have to have geographical representation as it's written, but the executive committee has to have, once again, this is the two-track conversation, the executive committee. My question was specific to, and I guess my answer is no, there isn't anything specific that a rotation of chair to that question. Okay, so then, I guess I'm at this point, I would have two simple requests that I think I would like to see. One is the way that it's worded right now, it says second vice president, if any. I'm not quite sure why the if any is in there. Because clearly, I don't see any way for us, because of what we're trying to do, right? By having county representation, geographical representation, you cannot have 5 officers if you have to have 5 geographical county representatives. And it also says that the mayor of the largest city within the 5-county region cannot count. So that's going to be 6. My goal originally was asking so that this be a 7-person committee. But if the interpretation is that this does not need to be necessarily, okay. I don't know that that makes governing sense, but it might make sense in the fact that you have to get 4 votes no matter what, right? For something to get through the executive committee, even if it's 6 members, you got to have 4 votes no matter what. So that's fine. Maybe in your Senate model or theory, that would be that. So I guess what I would like to see moving forward is I think that it goes back to option 2. I think that we should codify. I think that we should write it in that the executive committee is a 6-member committee represented by 1 governing officer of each of the 5 counties and the mayor of the largest city, and they will then fulfill the officer roles so that there is no shenanigans that could ever be done in theory of stacking to, oh, okay, I want to make my engineer, or I want to make another representative of my county as the officer, so that then that county would get another member on the executive committee. I think that would clarify it so that the officers that you wanted, the governing officers, those 6, fill the roles of those offices.
Commissioner Beveridge, much appreciated both questions and the introduction to this and your proposed resolution. And I don't know if Grace or Liz want to talk about it. I did check with Grace about our time, by the way. Executive committee begins at 11:30. We don't have any other action items on the agenda, so we do have some more time to discuss this. And I want to entertain questions. I have some to fill some, if nobody else has any right now. Go ahead, Dave, Mr. Greenspan.
Thank you. So Mr. Chair, I had some of the same comments, same notes I was writing down about the governing officers being the officers. And I had actually the word stacking down here, so I'll cross that out. The representation, I think, in the proposal is proportional. That was another comment I had, to make sure that the 6 are proportionally represented, so you don't get into a stacking situation where you could have the outlying counties overturn Cuyahoga and Cleveland. It's proportional. Question: what if the immediate past president is no longer in office? Who fills that role?
So that's happened before, and who fills that role is whoever takes their place on the board.
Okay. Then maybe that somehow needs to be noted. Immediate past
Good point.
president, if available, if not,
Or their successor,
there's.
Yeah. or their
I
elected
think that's
successor.
covered by the fact that that is the process for board members. If any office, although now it might be different with the appointee thing, but that is given, that's the process for fulfilling the member role. And so it's just like a 1-for-1. If that's the new member, then they
just
take
fit.
all the spots on any committees.
On a 3-3 vote, how's that resolved? Just goes back to negotiation to get
Yeah.
to a compromise?
That was Commissioner Beveridge's original point a number of months ago.
Okay.
But I do want to come back to that, actually, so keep going, Mr. Greenspan.
No, I think that's it. I mean, I was asking, is it 6 votes only? Because there was discussion that there were 7 people, but one county only counted 1 vote. How do they determine, that would need to be codified if that's going to be a process, if there's only 1 vote. Sounds like it's not written anywhere that it's 1 vote. They could
No.
each vote,
Mhm.
and then you get into the stacking.
Yeah, I was just saying in that particular exercise, they were saying they only had 1 vote. I don't know if that carried through to the executive committee as a whole, and I would think it would not.
Because that would go to the discussion, the comment I had about proportionality between representation, right? Because if, to Commissioner Beveridge's point, if Lake County had 2 people, then, and Lorraine had 1, then their vote counts disproportionately to Lorraine County, yet we're all equal members of this board. So that was, I think we're on the same page here, just those, we thought alike in a lot of these points. So I
Yeah.
had one question with 7 parts, but I'll dispense with the remaining 6.
All good points. Nick?
So,
Of course.
maybe Liz, you can correct me, but based on Robert's rules, the chair would be, if we only had 5 members show up, the chair would be the tiebreak. So if you're, when you're talking about the voting, from a standpoint of Robert's rules, yes, if there's 6, but in that case, if all 6 members were here, the chair wouldn't vote. Because,
Yes, under Robert's rules, chairs don't vote.
so,
It's a great point. And that is why our attorney carries his Robert's rules with, and you, our attorney Liz, carries your Robert's rules. And I got the chair, my successor, in issue of the Robert's rules. So, does that solve everything? No,
If I may?
yeah.
That kind of solves that problem,
Yeah.
first of all. Second of all, I think to the point about the immediate past president, I think if we want, I guess my other change would be just slash 3rd vice president or second treasurer, if you will, right?
Yeah.
Because they're technically not an immediate past president, but you either have an immediate past president, or in the case where the immediate past president is not a director anymore, then second treasurer or 3rd vice president.
Yeah. I did also want to pick up on that, but I think to Mr. Greenspan's point, if, I don't know if in the code it should, or if some of this we often leave to interpretation, but we end up in trouble when it's left for interpretation. So, Dave, to your point, I don't know if in the code, and I'm not sure I'm referring to the right document, but immediate past president or his or her elected successor, would make sense as kind of some code revision. Yeah. Right.
You,
And then-
sir?
yeah.
The only reason I would say no to that is that it might change. It may not be, if we're doing county representation, it may not be that specific person's elected successor. It
Good
may be a
point.
different
Yeah,
person
good- that's a
from,
good
so
point.
for example,
Yeah.
Jeff Brandon, he rotated off, but Aaron Harrison rotated on. So that wasn't his elected
Yeah,
replacement.
good
So,
point.
so just say
Or-
immediate past president, 3rd vice president, or however you, or
And-
second
and-
treasurer.
And to go to that, the 3rd vice president, just a question, we don't currently have such in language, right? We talked about this at the last meeting, but we don't currently. And to get to this number, the code does cite assistant secretary or treasurer, right? It doesn't cite 3rd vice president.
You could have as many vice presidents as you would like.
That's authorized in the current language of the
Correct.
code? Okay.
But I think with the immediate past president, if the immediate past president is no longer a member of the board, and therefore you could make the argument that they are not an officer and therefore not a member of the executive committee, but that's where the governing officer kicks in. And that county would still get a governing officer that would fill that 6th slot.
I just don't want to name it immediate past president. So just immediate past president slash, or whatever you want. Let's, 3rd vice president.
Yeah, why don't we ask the staff team to think about the or? Yep. Which I wanted to get down to the spirit of this while we have a few minutes. And I apologize if some of you are staying for executive committee. If some of you don't have time for more minutes to go, we would respect that too. But I did want to get to the differences between where we are now versus where we were in 2012. It strikes me, at least for the time I've been here in the last 3.5 years, this spirit of membership has not really been changed. There haven't been any additions. It's been, like you said, Grace, customary handshake to just elevate the next person, the next person, the next person up the channels from where they stand, from treasurer to secretary to second, first VPs and president, and then back to the immediate past president. That's been in place at least for the last 3.5 years. I think
It's been
it-
in place since, you said, all the way to 2000 in terms of a rotation.
Well, well, but in 2012, there was a larger group that was referenced, right?
You're not talking about the officers, and you're talking about the executive committee?
Yeah, I mean, that's where it gets
Yeah.
confusing. I'm back to the confusion, but the officers who you're telling me for 25 years have been in the rotating. Okay, and I don't know if this is, just it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of moment, but one of the things I continue to bring up, and I'm not gonna press it, but is in the case for support, and Debbie is my witness, because we've debated planners and engineers for years, but we love our engineers. I do, and I don't know, in the other counties than Cuyahoga, the engineer is a separately elected official, right? And I know you probably don't want me to go here, but do they have enough standing in this discussion as an independent countywide elected official? And if we just want to park that for another day, I respect that, but I just wanted to continue to note for the record that it feels like this is very commissioner driven and county executive driven and mayor driven. And I always wonder where's the place for the engineer, but let's bring that up. Some of you will love that, some of you won't, but I don't know. Any comment on that? Yeah. You're just looking at me. Okay, leave it alone for now. We can leave it alone. But just keep that door open if you ever want that discussion. So for now, I guess Commissioner Beveridge, I appreciate that you've always brought up the issue of this deadlock vote and was kind of clarified through Mr. Goris's understanding of Robert's rules, which I appreciate you bringing that up and educating us. Does that solve the issue?
Yes, sir.
All right. Okay. So there was no action on this today anyways, but it was a good discussion. But are we heading toward any action at all, or are we at peace?
So I would, as I said, but I don't know if we need more time to discuss, but I would make a motion to remove the word "if any" after and I have 3 recommendations, but if you want to do them all separate, we can do all separate.
Yeah, today,
The
I don't
two
know.
easy ones would be,
Let me park this for a second. If there was no action publicized on the agenda, we still can walk on action items. Okay, so let's entertain what you're talking about.
I would make a motion to remove the words "if any" after second vice president in, what is that, section 6.3?
Can you go back to that section that
Well-
we had on the screen, just for conversation purposes?
Oh, yeah.
Thanks. Okay, so you see in the parentheses the "if any," and I'm sure I think you're clear what you want to do there.
And actually, I don't, if it's not too controversial, I guess we can combine the first 2. I would make a motion to remove the words "if any" after second vice president and to change immediate past president to immediate past president / or third vice president.
Immediate past president or third vice president. Okay, I think he had one more, but the forerunning assumption is that the past chair, if not finding themselves in the case of not being reelected in the same cycle, the past, if past is prologue, the past chairperson assumes the role of immediate past president. And what you're saying, I'm just trying to put the words together with the action. So, or third vice president, we're either going to have a third vice president, or if in the event of a person is not reelected who would otherwise assume the immediate past president,
Yeah.
we cover ourselves.
And if we want to be specific, in the case that there is not an immediate past president on the board, then we go to a third vice president.
Could I make a recommendation?
Please, Commissioner
I
Brady.
think rather than modifying the immediate past president, I would make another sentence after that one, which would say something to the extent of, if the immediate past president of the board of directors is no longer on the board of directors, then, and go from there
yeah.
where you specify it, rather than trying to shove all that language in that same sentence.
Sure.
Fair.
Okay, we
Yeah.
got that. Thank you, Commissioner. And then you had a third point, and I know, Mr. Greenspan want to speak on it. Go ahead with your third. point.
Well, I think for this motion, we'll just be clarifying those first 2 points, remove
Okay.
if any. And then add Carolyn's sentence of, if the immediate past president is no longer on the board, then a third vice president.
Assumes the officer.
Quite.
Question, if we have a third vice president, and if you can go back to the list,
Mhm.
and then the succession of presidency, that person would basically jump the line for their county.
Because of the secretary treasurer beneath it.
Yes.
Is it possible that a third vice president is listed behind the secretary treasurer if that's ordinal? No?
We'd have to promote the secretary to the third vice president, treasurer to secretary, and then put the the new immediate past president as treasurer.
Go ahead, please,
You
Greenspan.
just make it a member at large, but it comes from the
That-
six, the governing.
That's interesting to me to go to this point about
They go-
engineers.
Then
Yeah.
it's either immediate president or
Yeah.
member at large, but they come from the governing officers to serve as the
That-
officers.
That's, go ahead, I'll
Love
reserve my
it.
comment till last. Love it?
Love it.
Love it. Perfect. I third their love for it. That might open up what we're talking about, which is some representation in a way that, yeah,
So
engineers.
just for the language, so we would say something like immediate past president or member at large if there isn't an immediate past president?
Chairbraki said,
Back to the language if it would.
immediate past president, period. If the immediate past president is no longer a board member, then it would become a member at large.
Just quick,
And
putting the
would-
two things together,
From-
that's what it is, right?
From
Go ahead.
that jurisdiction,
Yeah, I think that you would say, so
yes.
if the immediate past president of the board of directors is no longer a member of the board of directors, then you want to say essentially that person filling that role currently would become a member at large on the executive committee. And I'm sure Liz can
Yeah.
Yeah,
legalize,
I think
yeah.
Or at large.
Brenna's taking copious notes here. We got, but
Well, if I can, and I know you have one more point, but I think we're backing into this. And I want to start at the beginning, and the language I think we're trying to amend about executive committee is really the language about officers. And I think we should change the language about officers. And then executive committee, I think the goal there is to just make the executive committee who the officers are. So the
Right.
language that we're talking about, I think fits better under officers. And we can account for if an immediate past president is. And then for executive committee membership, it's the officers. Does that accomplish what?
So you'd like me
That
to get my third
approach.
point first?
is that your third?
I think that's what your third point
Yeah.
was, and I think that we start with that. Who are your officers? And then what I'm hearing is that whoever the officers of the board are is the executive committee. Does that sound right? I see one nod. And maybe, okay, yeah.
I have one question on the at-large. Is the intent the elected at-large? I mean, I think it is, right? Yeah.
Well, it has to be one of the governing officers.
Yeah.
I think it's to Liz's point, that if we say the officers and the executive committee consist of the 6 governing officers, then the immediate past president language and or member at large would have to be by default the missing 6th member of the governing officers.
Yeah, I'm trying to kind of winnow down the prospect of the elected officers appointing a non-elected officer, given all the discussion about elected officers in the past.
But
You think the language covers it?
I think if we say that the executive committee and officers shall consist of the 6 governing officers, being one from each county
Mhm.
as well as the mayor, then that's it. There's 6 people, figure out the
Yeah,
officer
just as,
positions. Yeah.
I know the spirit of it. I just wondered if we had
Yep,
to
yep.
refine the letter of it, but okay. I think you
Get
have
a
firm
motion and a
understanding.
second.
Draft something.
Yeah, you have,
We can draft something and
Understand.
circulate it.
yeah, we're
Okay.
not, I think we could report out from this committee to the board in June where we've been going with this. I might actually lean on some of you to help, report out, but I think we know where we want to take this. We don't have to ratify this today. We
today,
could just, we've got time in the next governing meeting to look at
Awesome.
the final language. This has been a terrific conversation, Mr. Greenspan.
Just one final comment,
Yeah.
just to be clear, I'm not good with names, so I can read a name, but Nick.
Yeah,
So it's, to be clear, there are 6 members, but the chair does not vote, so it's always going to be 5 votes in a.
under Robert's Rules of Order unless it's a tie.
Right. Right, okay, I just.
Yeah. Yeah.
Perfect.
I'm sorry, can we clarify? Because I think your point just sparked a question in my mind. If you've got 6 members, the purpose of having 6 members is so that each county and the city of Cleveland has a voice. If somebody is not permitted to vote, that county does not have a voice. So,
Yeah.
And I think in the, where Robert's rules is at is if there is a split, I think at that point in time, I think it's there, but the intent is, I've always gone with the intent of if there's a tie break, the chair was a tie break. The chair is always, should be always, in a voice call vote, should always be the last person to call his vote.
And not to throw this.
Yes,
In
that's how I've
the
read it.
British system.
Yeah.
The Speaker of the House is a non-voting administrative officer.
Mhm.
They just run the meetings.
Yep.
So I'm not saying we have a 7th person
Yeah.
sit in that role, but if we're concerned about this, that is how.
Perhaps given all the discussion about this, we should, at some point, since we're the governance committee, we perhaps should have a little bit of a refresher on this matter. I've followed what Nick has said over time as a chair, which is to vote last in a voice vote. And we haven't had at the executive committee, I don't think, a moment in the last few years where we've had a deadlock, but cleaning that up is important. But I think just following what you've said, that's kind of where I've been on it, but I think we should, with all of our committees, let it be known what the protocol is here, what the rules are. Yeah, okay. You don't have to interpret it now, but if you, that's okay. I think it's just, these are good things for future. I mean, it wouldn't hurt, right, to have it cleared out. Any new committee chair?
I prefer the clarity.
Yep.
I mean, I very much respect the flexibility that is often put into the code.
Yeah,
But over many years of changes to the code,
yeah.
they haven't always aligned in different sections, and relying on handshake agreements
Right.
has been always a little bit anxiety
Right.
causing.
If this were a voting matter that had a near deadlock or deadlock, believe me, we'd be paying attention to this, right? So we might as well get clarity on it.
And I will say, just to give you a little background, a lot of the rotation's been in place for a long time, but this overlay in large part came out of a strategic planning process that the board undertook in 2012 and 2013 that focused on the primary tenant in NOACA's vision statement to be regional cohesion.
Yep.
And they wanted to make it clear that regional cohesion meant every single member was honored.
Yep. Okay, thank you for that. All right, we will see the staff revisions to the conversations today for our consideration for future ratification and send that off eventually to the board. So and the executive committee. So this is great. Appreciate the conversations on the action and non-action items. Are there any reports or updates to discuss in today's meeting? Seeing none, I'll move on to old business. Any old business? Seeing none, I'll move on to a new business. Any new business? Seeing none. with appreciation to you guys for the attendance and the engagement in this conversation. Thank you. I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved by Commissioner Beveridge and seconded by Commissioner Brackey. All in favor to adjourn?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting is closed. Thank you, everybody. And for those of the executive committee, I think we're meeting in 15 minutes. Have a good weekend. Go Cavs. Go Guards. Thank you, guys. That was
Notice this meeting has been publicly posted and major public media has been notified. NOACA conducts its meetings according to Robert's Rules of Order. Actions during the meeting will be taken by voice vote. If any member feels the need to abstain from any vote due to a conflict of interest, he or she should state their intention to abstain when the matter is introduced by the chair for a presentation for the record. Subsequently, that member shall not participate in any discussion of the matter for which a conflict exists. According to Robert Rules, absence from a meeting does not require a member to abstain from voting on the minutes. If the member still wishes to abstain, he or she should state their intention for the record. For the benefit of our guests from the public and the recording of this meeting, please be sure to speak into a microphone. The microphones can be turned on and off using the button on top of them. Okay, in regards to the meeting minutes from February 13, 2026, any corrections or additions? Can I have a second? Can I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is approved. In regards to the April 29th, 2026 special meeting, any corrections or additions? Can I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is approved. All right, public comment. Anyone signed in to speak for public comment this morning? No one is signed in for public speaking. Great, fantastic. Is there an executive director's report?
Just have a couple of things. Oops, yeah, thank you. Just have a couple of things. I wanted to present this document to let you know, I think we've not talked about this, so I wanted to make you aware of it. The Finance and Audit Committee meeting this past month, we presented this information, which they had requested at a previous meeting. We have had lots of discussions at the Finance and Audit Committee level and even at planning and programming about ending balances and spending down the ending balances. And so we put this analysis together and we will continue to report on this quarterly. And basically what we are showing is that there is about $47 million of ending balances that have not yet been encumbered. They're designated to projects, but they have not moved forward in the system to encumber them, to remove them from the balances. And so we're just wanting to make sure that everyone is aware of that and knowing that we are working with the project sponsors to move them forward and that it is something we are taking seriously. So, but it's in Finance and Audit and it will be in that document quarterly.
Great.
Okay. And then there is one more item that I wanted to speak about, but I think I'm going to probably best do it under new business, which is I would like to talk about dues and the fact that we have some surplus balance at NOACA. And should we consider, which I think we should, a reprieve from the members of paying the full dues. So giving a refund back essentially. So we'll talk about that under new business.
Great. Thank you, Grace. Any other questions for Grace? Okay. Now we'll move to the executive committee action items. We have a special presentation from Allison Ball regarding the regional strategy for coordinating funding opportunities for the fourth quarter of 2026. Allison, the floor is yours.
Great. Can everyone hear me? Thank you. I'm Allison Ball, Grants Coordinator here at NOACA, and I will be presenting the quarterly updates to the regional strategy for coordinating funding opportunities. Today, the Executive Committee is asked to place the fourth quarter state fiscal year 2026 updates to the regional strategy for coordinating funding opportunities on the Board of Directors agenda for June 2026. I'll be referring to this as the strategy for short. The Board of Directors last ratified the updates to the strategy for third quarter state fiscal year 2026 at their meeting in March 2026. Based on federal guidance, the regions prioritize their capital needs, that regions prioritize their capital needs. NOACA developed a plan to match potential funding opportunities with the region's priority projects. As grant announcements have varied widely from projected timelines, and some of the funding programs have been split or combined in ways that weren't originally anticipated, NOACA also developed a quarterly update process. NOACA's regional strategy was adopted via Resolution 2023-018, and the guidance for updating this strategy was subsequently adopted via Resolution 2023-032. This guidance provides a structured, flexible process for proposed updates, ensures fair practices in implementing and updating the strategy, and furthermore, if the strategy needs to be updated in between NOACA board meetings, this resolution allows NOACA staff to work with partners to update the strategy for ratification at the subsequent board meeting. Communities may propose updates for consideration by submitting forms available on NOACA's Funding Resources website. If an update is necessary between quarterly updates, as I already said, NOACA will implement consistent with the Resolution 2023-032. So following your memo in the packet, starting on page 17, there are two versions of the strategy with the included updates. The first version of the strategy is color-coded, marked up version, and the second version is how it appears as the final. In the marked up version, the italics show applications that were not submitted. There are a variety of reasons that the applications were not submitted that include that the project never opened or the project didn't fit the actual notice of funding opportunity. So blue indicates that the applications that have been submitted and are under review. Green indicates projects that were awarded funds, and red indicates projects that did not receive funding. The final version only shows applications that were not submitted and the ones that were awarded funds. For this quarter, there are two proposed updates to the strategy, one from Lorain County and another from the city of Shaker Heights. Both requests are moving their projects from 2025 to 2026 for Safe Streets for All. As a reminder, most of these funding opportunities offer two separate pots of funding, one for planning and another for implementation, and our policy allows NOACA to support projects in each of these categories. The proposed updates can be specifically on page 20 of your packet and above in the slide. So today, the committee is asked to approve this item, which will then go to the board in June for ratification. Since applications for this grant close on May 26, 2026, prior to the next board meeting, ratification in this context means approving after the action has already occurred, as outlined in Resolution 2023-018. Furthermore, staff will continue guidance from federal agencies on existing programs and guidelines, collaborate with the partner communities and organizations to ensure project applications from our region are submitted, and update the Funding Resources webpage on a regular basis, and continue implementing and updating the strategy through calendar year 2026. Once again, the action we are requesting is that the executive committee place the regional strategy for funding opportunities updates for fourth quarter state fiscal year 2026 on the board of directors agenda for June 2026.
Great. Thank you, Allison. Any questions for Allison before we move forward with the proposal? Okay, fantastic. Am I doing this right? Yeah?
Yes.
Allison, you're all done?
Great.
Okay, great. Can I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is approved. Okay, now as we prepare for the June 26th meeting, Grace will cover the recommended items which have been vetted by other committees for placement on the board of directors for the June 26th meeting agenda as a group. And we will take a single action on them unless there is a motion made to separate and act individually on one or more items. Grace, the floor is yours.
Good morning again. So we're going to go through the individual items that will be placed on the June board agenda. So we have consent agenda items, and then we have the other items which we will go into in more detail. So first, I'm going to review the consent agenda items, which will be the minutes of the March 13th board meeting, the regional strategy for coordinating funding opportunities that you just heard from Allison on, the fourth quarter 2026 plan and tip amendment. This is your standard quarterly updates. There are projects here that are not requesting NOACA funds, as well as projects that are already programmed with NOACA funds included. Again, it's in your packet, and these are typically not controversial. These are ordinary routine projects. I do want to note that the ones for GCRTA, we are working with GCRTA to address the perhaps the more strategic placement of their items, so there's not as many of them on the quarterly basis. So we are working with them, and that was also a recommendation from our quadrennial review. So next is state fiscal year, and if you have any questions and want to stop me, please do. So any questions on this one? Okay. State fiscal year 2027 annual priority list. This is essentially taking the long-range plan, which is a 20-plus year plan, the TIP, which is the first 4 years of that plan, and then the annual priority list, which is the first year. We are talking about $46 million. It comes from our block grant funds, transportation alternatives, and CMAQ for the most part. There are 19 projects. All of the projects meet the evaluation criteria for the plan and TIP and have been previously approved by the board in the plan and in the TIP. And there is concurrence on all of these projects. In terms of funding by distribution type, major roadway rehab is 35%. Minor roadway rehab is 44%. So the two of those together are close to 80% of what we are spending our funds on. We certainly have shared use path at 14%, traffic control, bike facilities, bridge preservation, and pedestrian facilities that make up the remainder of it. By the way, this addresses our board policy of spending on rehabilitation as opposed to new. Funding distribution by county, as would be expected, the distribution demonstrates the proportionality of the funding. And so Cuyahoga's population, Geauga, Lake, Lorraine, and Medina's population are all considered when we develop the projects and utilize the criteria to support them. These are the specific projects. There are both some big ones, like the Lyndhurst project for $6 million on Mayfield Road, as well as some smaller ones, such as Geauga County in Chardon at $600,000. For bridges, we only have one project in Medina. Major roadway, our largest project is Lee Road. To make it clear, this is really just a portion of the project, so it's phase one. Phase one is in Shaker Heights. Phase two is Cleveland. So we are working still on phase two Cleveland, so that will be brought to you at a separate time. Bicycle pedestrian. Largest is the Cleveland Metro Parks. Any questions on the projects for the annual priority list?
Can I, just one question, on the proportionality of project spend relative to the actual use, the one right before that, right, one slide prior, on the bridge side, that's just a reflection of requests. It's not a reflection of
Needs.
priorities and stuff. I mean, because I'm sure every county's dealing with it.
Yes,
but
this is
we have a
only a
ton of bridges.
reflection of where we have actually allocated
Okay.
the money in this
Yeah.
one year. I will,
Is this a little different from years past? I mean, in terms of bridge spend?
only when Vrooman
Yeah.
Road was in here at, $30+ million.
Okay.
But generally it's been consistent. And we will have a change in the next
Yeah.
year or two, couple of years, when we put Hilliard Road
Hilliard,
Bridge on here.
that's what I was referring to. Thank you.
We also had a little bit last year when we had Rockside Road
Okay.
bridges. So it depends on what we have,
Yep.
but generally we don't have a lot of big projects other than those major
Okay,
projects.
thanks.
I also want to be clear that this funding distribution is just for the 1 year, but when we prepare the proportionality to ensure that we are being geographically equitable, we do it for the 4-year tip. So it won't be exact to the proportions that we do that at the 4-year tip level. Okay. And then there are sometimes trades which projects may slide back and other ones are moved forward. So public transportation agency safety performance measures targets. This is routine in the sense that it is a requirement from the federal government for us to establish annual safety performance targets for the safety performance measures that have been identified, which are injuries, fatalities, safety events, and system reliability. So we have them for each of the 5 transit agencies. Lake Tran and Geauga County are together since they are now providing services as an individual entity. Any questions on those? Procurement, this is a contract amendment with DGL Consulting Engineers. We consider this as a consent agenda item because it really is asking more for an extension of time than the intent of, than money, because the intent of the funds were already committed by the board in 2024. So in 2024, the board approved a contract not to exceed $100,000 with an option to extend for another year, which would make it $200,000. We did assign a task order to DGL for project management of the I-71 corridor study. That contract is for $153,000, but it spans 3 fiscal years. And we only had 2 originally determined in the contract. So this is an approval for 1 additional year through the extension of fiscal year 27. Any questions on that? Credit card policy amendment. This also is considered a consent agenda item or recommended for that, although it is not routine, meaning that we don't do this often, but the Auditor of State has issued a bulletin joining the Ohio Ethics Commission advisory opinion that recommends public offices adopt policies and rules for the personal use of reward program points accrued while conducting business. This is what has been recommended in the advisory opinion, which slightly deviates than from previous directives, but points that are earned doing business can be kept by the employees, but there are certain restrictions on doing that. But it is intended to clarify how, when people are traveling for business, those points accrue and who gets them. It also makes clear that anything that is accrued by NOACA on its own credit card even if it's travel for staff members, stays with NOACA. What makes this a little unique now or different is if the NOACA card purchases an airfare for an employee, the employee does not get the credit card points, but they can take the airline points. So that's what the bulletin says, and we are adopting that at the NOACA policy level. So those are the consent agenda items. I can move on now to the individual action items. First is the public infrastructure improvements in Brook Park. This is a plan amendment for the infrastructure related to the new stadium project in Brook Park. We are following the process that we have been following. It has been scheduled to go to the board for inclusion in the long-range plan. When it was adopted by the board in project plan review, that resolution had conditions for further study and development of infrastructure proposals related to the other communities outside of Brook Park, but still within the influence area. And we had recommendations regarding parking and pedestrian studies. We believe the parking and pedestrian has been addressed. The conditional, they are working on. They are absolutely taking the instructions we have given them to be prepared with a scope of service and a timeline for this meeting to relay to the board, with then the tip inclusion scheduled for September, at which time they will have the report hopefully concluded and be able to present that in September. We believe that they are endeavoring to comply with these conditions, and we will have more explanation about the satisfying of the conditions at that meeting. We also have Mayor Orcutt available today. I think I see him, do I not? Yes. If you have any questions on this item, since we know that it is a sensitive item. Okay. Moving forward, well, these are the areas just to identify the areas that we have assigned.
Can I go,
Yeah.
just a question, point of order on the last matter we discussed? Is this in a consent resolution? Is that?
It is not.
Okay.
We have extracted this from the
All right,
consent
thank you.
items and made it its own item because we know that it is
All right,
sensitive
thanks.
and the board may have interest in discussing it separately.
Okay.
And these are the areas that we have asked them to include in the additional study. These were identified by NOACA staff in its modeling as additional points of congestion outside of Brook Park, in the city of Cleveland, as well as in Berea, Middleburg Heights. We are also performing air quality conformity, which is not yet complete because we are still conducting the interagency consultation with our partner agencies, but that is expected to be completed prior to the meeting. At this point, we are recommending that it be on the agenda. Any further questions? Okay. Then resolution of support for the Basics Act. As you all know, the current transportation authorization expires in September of this year, and there are currently congressional hearings and discussions underway about a reauthorization. The local officials in transportation, which is called the LOT Coalition, has produced a proposal called Basics, Bridges and Safety Infrastructure for Community Success. This has been done in partnership with our MPO, national organizations, AMPO and NARC. Those are the ones I work with, but also the National Association of Counties, NACO, the National Association of Development Organizations, NATO, National League of Cities, and the U.S. Conference of Mayors. So this is a proposal that has been developed by locals for locals. And we discussed this at the External Affairs Committee. And the idea is to support this because we are looking to have discretionary dollars that are currently available in the IIJA shifted to formula funding. So we believe that our region would gain more, and so does all of the rest of the folks who have supported this. We would end up with more funding at a local level and a predicted level of funding if we did it by formula rather than the discretionary.
Grace, is this a renewal or a new law once IJA and BIL expire?
It's both.
Okay.
So it's really, you know, as a matter of practice, it is developed every 5 or 6 years. So you can call that a renewal, but they each stand independently. So again, looking to expedite repair of deficient roads and bridges, reduce red tape, prioritize safety, all things that we have heard, and nationally, the local government organizations have been speaking towards. So the resolution just says that NOACA supports the Basics Act. It's also important to note that the Basics Act is not the entire reauthorization. It will be one component of the reauthorization. We also have in there the stabilization of the Highway Trust Fund in our legislative agenda. And everything here is aligning with that. So,
Commissioner
Yep.
Beveridge had a question.
Thank you, Grace. Back to the part about the formula funding, out of curiosity, as I've tried to learn the funding, the
Yes.
formula funding is the dollars that come in guaranteed every time that gets distributed by population most times?
correct.
Okay. And the discretionary as it is now would just be, if your community qualifies or if your project gets selected.
Right. And what has been experienced by the local governments, including in our region, that many communities who thought they could apply for funds, their projects either are not eligible, or they're too small to be considered, or on the strength of larger cities or larger regions, their case ends up being stronger than ours. And so we're not necessarily as successful. And so ensuring that we have those dollars as discretionary, as formula rather than discretionary, is in our favor.
Thank you.
Authorizing spending for fiscal years 2026 legal fees. We do have legal fees in the budget, and it is set for $100,000. However, new legal issues have arisen this year that have necessitated additional legal guidance and therefore the associated fees, particularly 3 items: amendments to the Code of Regulations, legal advice on the new human resources structure and related matters, and lawsuit filed against the agency, which relates to the amendments to the Code of Regulations. So based on that, they will exceed my authorization for spending. So therefore, we are asking for approval to increase the legal fees to $200,000. And it will not increase overall spending for the agency. We have other funds that have been unused or projects that have come in under budget, and we will redirect those funds to cover this. And then we will continue to work with our legal counsel to identify future cost savings measures. Any questions? Cybersecurity program. This is something that is now required by Ohio Revised Code 9.64. It was effective September 30th of 2025, the legislation. It establishes a deadline of July 1, 2026, and it specifies that cybersecurity program-related documents are not subject to disclosure under Ohio Public Records Law, and that the legislative authority of a political subdivision adopt a cybersecurity program. So this is asking for the board to adopt a cybersecurity program that identifies our risks and impacts of a breach, specifies mechanisms used by our agency to detect threats, specify the procedures for incident response, future cybersecurity events in terms of prevention, and cybersecurity training for all employees. Many of these things we already have and we already do. We have cybersecurity training every month that every employee takes. So we're already doing many of these things, but we will need to follow the state's legislation to document such. And so we are engaging a consultant on technology partners to assist in cybersecurity program development. The consulting engagement is only $14,000, so the funding isn't what is propelling this in front of the board. It's that we need it adopted per statute. Any further questions on that? That moves us to the Aviation Advisory Council Charter. I believe all of you were in the governance committee meeting, so there is no need to review this in any detail. The Aviation Advisory Council Charter has been recommended by the governance committee, and we are requesting to take it to the board in June. And because it is a new item and a new addition to our committee structure, we are not including it in a consent agenda item. Any further questions? Presentation items. We will be presenting at the June board meeting the I-71 Crossroads Study Update. This is a very important study that we have undertaken, one of the largest in our history at close to $1 million. And the congestion along I-71, particularly at the southern end of Cuyahoga County and the northern end of Medina County, is what we've been working on. The consultants have done all of the current conditions assessments. We presented that publicly in the fall. They are now working on alternatives analysis. They have developed 6 alternatives, and they will be presenting you with the clarity on those 6 and why they are recommending that we continue to study 3 of them out of the 6. So we are requesting that the executive committee place the slate of items on the board of directors agenda for June 26, 2026, the consent agenda items listed to the left and the individual action items listed to the right, as well as the presentation item listed below.
Thank you, Grace. Can I have a motion to place a proposed slate of items, including consent agenda items, on the Board of Directors meeting agenda for June 26, 2026?
Mr. President,
Yes.
before
sorry,
that,
Council.
I would be willing to suggest that the cybersecurity program and even potentially the authorizing for spending of the extra legal fees be moved into the consent agenda. I mean, obviously, anything in the consent agenda can be removed out, but I don't know whether the full board, at least for my 2 cents, would want a full presentation on those two topics, but.
I'm open to that discussion. Any others want to chime in on that from the executive committee?
I'm good with it too.
Everyone else? Any issues with legal counsel on that?
None. To Commissioner Beveridge's point, if somebody at the larger board has a objection to it, we would take it out of the consent agenda at that time, but I think it would help streamline things for the June meeting.
So I'll make a motion to move item J and K, authorizing spending for fiscal year 2026 legal fees in the cybersecurity program out of individual action items into consent agenda items.
Is there a second to,
Second.
all those in favor say aye?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion is approved. Thank you, Commissioner.
Then I would make a motion to approve the consent agenda and then the rest of the items to be presented to the June meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Thank you for the hard work there, Grace and team. Appreciate
you
it so
so
much.
much.
Thank you. Great job, team. Okay, before we move forward with the rest of the agenda, I'd like to make a motion for the executive committee to adjourn for an executive session pursuant to ORC 121.22 G1 to consider the appointment, employment, dismissal, discipline, promotion, demotion, or compensation of a public employee or official, or the investigation of charges or complaints against a public employee. Is there a second?
It's second, or I can make the motion if you want.
Oh, am I allowed to? Did I do that wrong?
It's okay. Do maybe.
So moved. So moved what he said.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Oh, roll call. Sorry, Brenda. Roll call.
Commissioner Beveridge.
Aye.
Nick Goris.
Aye.
Brandon Gibson.
Aye.
David Greenspan. County Executive Ronayne.
Aye.
Mayor Bibb.
Aye.
Okay, the vote is unanimous.
Fantastic. The motion is approved. We will exit for executive session and return shortly. Thank you so much. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is approved. Okay. Are there any other reports or updates?
Mr. President,
Yes.
I would like to make a motion to recommend to the full board that it enter into a contract with Executive Director Galucci for calendar year 2027 at the June board meeting.
Great. Is there a motion to approve?
That was-
Is there a second?
You need a second? I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any discussion? Motion is approved. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I look forward to continuing the hard work of NOACA and working with you all to get us where we need to be.
Thank you, Grace. We appreciate it so much. Okay. All right. Any old business? Any new business?
Mr. President,
Yes.
I would like to amend the agenda to add in discussion items, the aforementioned, motion that we made about entering into a contract with Grace for calendar year 2027.
Great. Is there a second? Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is passed. Thank you, Commissioner. Any other new business?
As I had mentioned, we have done a terrific job, meaning NOACA and Finance Department, in earning interest on funds. And we've earned over $1 million worth of interest that by no means would we have done without a lot of hard work in being able to align funding, federal funding, with various projects that we were in control of the funds for. Make a long story short, I've got $1 million. We could spend it on lots of things. But one of the things I thought maybe we could spend at least some of it on, if not all of it, is the dues for NOACA are about $1 million. And I know that a lot of local governments are struggling right now, that funds are hard to come by. And can we or should we give them a rebate of some sort? You know, maybe not the full, maybe not the full million, maybe we keep some of it in our reserve. But, can we do 50% of it, or we can, so just wanted to bring that up for discussion.
I just
Thoughts?
haven't been through a return of funds to communities in a difficult fiscal time that had to do with a different source of funds in our county. But I think it's always good practice to get back to your communities, monies that you can get back to them. I think your idea of a 50% and hold some of it, and perhaps the next 50 goes in years to come, is a good idea.
Mr. President, I just wanted to say, job well done, and I appreciate you bringing this, especially since the money, as you put, is earning interest on taxpayer dollars. I think all of us pay our dues with taxpayer dollars. And so, because we have this money because of the interest earned, not necessarily of other taxpayer dollars, that we should use it to what we've said to give that break. And so I would absolutely, I'd do the whole thing, but I guess it's 50 if you need the money.
That's up
But
for discussion, Joe. Just
yeah,
playing off of your recommendation.
I guess what the funds
Yeah,
are the.
Instructor might have a nervous breakdown if I want to give the entire 100%.
I think half is great.
But at least half, and we can certainly look a little bit stronger at our ending balances to see if there's not a little bit more we can do.
And is the money, the fees, are those paid by, I assume, population as well?
They're paid by population.
Okay.
Some of the counties pay for it entirely, like Medina County pays for it entirely at the county level. When you get to, say, Lorraine or Cuyahoga, individual jurisdictions pay. City of Cleveland pays its own. So there's real money that will go back to communities.
If we just did a 50% reduction, it's fair amongst the population. so to speak.
Correct.
Okay.
Absolutely.
That's a great idea. Okay. Brandon?
Yeah, I just have a question about the $1 million. What amount of overage as a percentage of funds does that represent? Because I know at the state with the discretionary rainy day funds, once you meet a certain point, you have to start giving that money back. And I agree with Commissioner Beveridge and County Executive Ronayne that's good practice anytime we have excess money to give it back to the taxpayers.
Yeah, and the reason I'm bringing up now, because we've been sort of stockpiling it for like 2 or 3 years in terms of how we've managed the funds, is that the money was related to Irish Town Bend, and the project just now has concluded. So we are still not yet drawing down all of the funds. So this fiscal year is when we will have all of the funds drawn down and no longer earn interest. So this is the closing point, and it is very important. I don't know that there is any specific number for NOACA, but we will look into that. That's an excellent point. Again, just knowing from a public administrator, as a public administrator and teaching, budgeting, it's always a best practice to give back to the communities the funding that they paid in.
Question, when are the dues assessed and paid?
Excellent question.
Thank
That would be my next point. They'll be assessed in July. So can I get a motion to put this on the June board meeting?
Yes. I would make a motion for the June board meeting agenda to reduce all membership dues by 50% and fill that shortfall by the funds that you were speaking of.
That's
Can can I just add a clarifying point? Reduce the dues for one fiscal year,
Yeah, I was
correct?
gonna say,
Yeah.
that's what I was gonna bring up, just so people don't have a sticker shock
I
the
mean,
next year.
You caught that?
Yep.
You caught me on that one? Sorry.
did.
Well, that's why I was wondering, and we can talk about the mechanics, and the mechanics don't have to
Yes.
be in the legislation, but do I actually issue a check of a rebate or actually reduce the funds? Because I don't want them to get sticker shock to say next year it's something different.
If it's if we're in a discussion point at this, I would see the wisdom of the rebate, you know?
Me too.
I'm sorry,
Oh.
go ahead.
Is there a second? All those in favor?
Well, maybe
Oh, we're
just a
discussion.
discussion,
Okay.
or maybe yield it back to the staff team, but it would seem that the rebate language is, you just don't want in year 2 for somebody to expect and bet into their budget a reduced sum, because it's gonna come back up.
I guess, but my
potentially.
hope would be is that elected officials are smart enough to understand what we're doing here. I'm the guy, I mean, but
Do the fiscal officers talk to the
Right,
electeds
but the
and
way
so
the
on,
fiscal
you know?
officers work it, I think
Yeah.
they would probably prefer a rebate
Rebate,
because that goes
right.
into revenue.
Right.
Whereas reducing their
Mm.
expenses then does cause a differential for the next year.
Yeah, I agree with that, that just keep the charge the same, but give the rebate so that there's not a expectation in the next year.
And so they can keep their accounting consistent, right?
Okay.
legal, would you like me to amend my recommendation?
I think so.
Okay, then I would like to amend my motion to say, recommend to the full board at the June board meeting that we rebate 50% of the membership dues
For fiscal year 2026.
for fiscal year 2026.
Is there a second?
Yep.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It's adopted. Thank you, Grace. Great idea. Fantastic. Good budgeting as well, too. Okay, any other new business? Okay. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Meeting is adjourned, only 6 minutes over. Congratulations. 54 minutes ahead. There we go.
And 11 minutes.
Yes, go Cavs. Thank you. Have a good weekend, everybody.
Thank you.